It needs like a 3, 2, 1 countdown. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to EDU Endpoint Office Hours. It is September 9th, 2025. This is the inaugural kickoff for FY26, fiscal year 26. So we'll be running through the end of June or the beginning of June of 2026. So following you guys for the school year. We're really excited to have you guys back. We've got some big updates for you all. But first, I do want to introduce you to some new faces. So again, we've had some changes internally at Microsoft, and so we've said goodbye to some friends and we're saying hello to some new friends. Yours truly and Richard are still here, and we'll be continuing to run this. Scott is also still going to be part of this. I don't know what he's doing right now, but he wants to be a part of this for sure. So he will continue to help us out. Chenille as well. She's up in the east area. And then for some of the newer team members, you guys might remember Carlos Diaz. He's part of the Intune product team devoted to EDU customers, and he wanted to also stay pretty engaged with this community and make sure that y'all are giving him feedback on the product, and he can take those insights on how y'all are using the solutions and how he can drive change and product growth. So we're excited to have him participate a little bit more actively this year. And then 3 new members on our team, Nick, Oscar, and Nicholas. Sometimes you'll hear us refer to as Nicholas as Grove, just because there's 2 Nicks on the team now. So if you see these fellows jump in, we're excited to have them on the team. So just again, all of us are devoted to education in one form, fashion, or another. Some of us are devoted to higher ed, and then some of us have a lot of experience with the K-12 kind of area. So again, just want to make sure that you guys know these folks, so as they pop in or as they start answering questions, or maybe you'll see them present, you kind of know who they are. As we progress through these meetings, standard fashion applies as far as etiquette and courtesy. We want to make sure that you are being respectful of each other, right? Mute your mic when you're not speaking, turn off your camera if you don't want to be recorded, especially during the presentations that we might have from our speakers. We have the Q&A enabled in the chat, as well as just using the chat pane, but sometimes that chat river can get a little noisy. So if you have a specific question, I'd love if you would just throw a Q in front of that so we can kind of watch that and make sure we can get your questions answered. And we still do have our LinkedIn group. Richard told me not to talk about it, but I forgot to delete it. So we're talking about it, that it still exists out there. There's the link to that. I'll throw it in the chat as well for you guys, so that you can join that and you can collaborate kind of in an offline manner. The other thing that we did introduce last year, and I don't have a slide for it, is we have the email alias that we did create. When you email that does go to everybody. So if you have a question outside, let's see. Gonna go ahead and mute you there.
I got him.
Had a hot mic.
I got him.
We also have that email alias, EDU Endpoint Office Hours. I don't remember the exact address there, but it's the one I emailed you all with the invite to this. And because you all got the invite, sounds like that email alias is working as expected. So feel free to respond to that if you have questions, and definitely collaborate amongst yourselves. We are also trying a little bit of a hack with this Teams meeting to see if we can get persistent chat. I'm not going to make any promises. We'll find out after today if it worked. So hopefully we can get that persistent chat going for this meeting as well. Okay, before we go further, Richard, anything that I missed?
No, I think you're good.
Okay, let's move forward. I'm going to show this a little bit here just for some updates. I really don't... I started putting a list of all the updates over the summer together for you guys that really spans Windows and Intune and Windows 365 and Entra and blah, 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 blah. It's a lot. So I kind of broke this up with some GAs and PSAs, right? We've got general availability of some things that you may already be aware of, and then there's also some public service announcements that you all should be aware of as well. So I've got some links here. What I'll do in just a moment is kind of share my screen and kind of walk through some of the blogs that are big updates. And then Richard has a massive update that he's going to demo and share with you all related. Well, I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'll let him speak about it. So a surprise is incoming here in a little bit. So to kick us off, there was a message center post that just came out yesterday or 2 days ago that there are some new Intune network endpoints that are coming down the pike that you need to update any of your firewall or other network appliances in your environment to allow specific IPs and other URLs to come through, specifically because the part of our Secure Future initiative, that's our SFI product or initiative, I should say, to secure all of our products. We have some new IP ranges that are going to be reliant on the Azure front door IP address ranges. So if you're an Azure customer and you're leveraging that today, you may not have to do that much, but for those of you who aren't leveraging Azure in a native capacity like that, you'll want to pay attention to this. I don't have a direct link to it, but that is the Message Center post ID. I already talked to 2 customers today, and both of them saw the Message Center post, but they didn't actually read it. And you need to read it because it is important. And so those IP addresses are being updated later this fall. So you'll want to make sure that you get that excluded from any network appliances that could hold any issues with the network service itself. 2 pieces that are actually kind of past due, so you've likely already run into them if it was a problem, but for those of you that don't know, the Microsoft Intune connector for Active Directory had a security update, so you need to get that updated. This is particular for customers that are leveraging that connector to do hybrid join or like during the autopilot phase or domain join as part of that. So if you're reliant on that connector, there is an update there. You'll want to get that updated ASAP. I don't think it's a breaking change necessarily, but we want to make sure that you've got that updated in your environment. The third piece there is secure boot certificates did expire or will expire in June 2026. There are some instructions within that blog of what you need to do. Kind of related to that. So again, you've got some time along that, but it is important to read that blog and understand what actions you need to take in your own environment so that your devices don't become unmanaged. So those are kind of the 3 big PSAs to make you guys aware of. If you don't already know, too, from a GA perspective, we did go GA with Platform SSO for Mac OS with Microsoft Entra ID, so that's really exciting. A lot of you guys have been trialing this or previewing this in your own environments in production. It was in the preview stage, but they have made that GA. And we also have pull print now available inside of Universal Print. So I think some of you were also testing that as well. That announcement came out a long time ago, I think at Ignite last year, and it's finally available 100% to all customers. So if you are still exploring a migration over to Universal Print for those Entra ID devices, then you can now start leveraging pull print. And then, oh yeah, don't forget that Windows 10 end of life is in October. So you are down to like a month. I think October 14th, right? You're like down to a month to get those devices upgraded or out of your environment. We also have ESUs now for education. That is, you can buy extended security updates for those Windows 10 devices that can't upgrade for education pricing in particular. It is $1 per device for 1 year. And then if you need year 2, it's $2 per device. And then year 3, it's $4 per device. So it does double every year. It's not terrible pricing. So if you have a handful of devices out there that are still running Windows 10 and you need to secure them, those ESUs are available on the price list. You can contact your resellers and get those ESUs. We had some blogs also over the summer that really did a great job of detailing what that process would look like if you need to deploy those ESUs. So
Garrett,
yeah,
if you have the ESUs, Jesse wants to know, how do they apply them?
yeah. Good question. Let me get you the blog because the blog it has been published. Actually, let me pull this up really quick here. Let's see if I kill my screen and then I move this one over.
Copilot.
There is a core infrastructure blog. Let me see if I can find it for you. Look at that, it came right up for me. I'll throw this link into the chat for you all. Oh, I see a poll. Scott must be in the meeting now. Scott's here. There he is. All right. Scott, stop talking about FFUs. You're too early.
Yeah.
Gosh, stealing Richard's thunder. Okay, so this blog, enabling extended security updates for Windows 10 with Intune specifically. There are some scripts that one of our CSAs has generated. So you can go through this, and we can actually use this as a proactive remediation to apply these ESUs directly to your environment once you acquire them. We also give you the option to do a Win32 application if you want to push that out there. So this is a fantastic blog for you to go read and get those ESUs deployed out to your environment. They are essentially activation IDs, right, that you would use for like Mac or KMS, like you would previously do. Obviously, a lot of you are using subscription activation, so just being able to apply this key should be able to activate it. So I just threw this link into the blog, but this is a great write-up for you to be able to do this. I have not done this personally because the keys aren't quite available yet, but this should be able to answer you and help you through that.
Yeah, it's if you did Windows 7 to Windows 10 ESU, then you would basically be going through a similar process, although at that time you probably weren't using Intune like you might be today. So this blog post helps leverage some of the new, I say new, but the stuff that we didn't have back when Windows 10 came out, the stuff that we have now that you can use to take advantage of ESUs and deploy them through Intune.
Yep. Okay. So the other things that I wanted to show and just highlight for you, and it's stuff that you guys probably are already aware of, but we had, wait, are there any other questions about the
Nope, you're good.
PSAs or GAs?
Oh, well, I don't know about that, but there aren't any other questions in the chat, so.
Okay, good. Okay. So from an Intune perspective, a few different blogs that were published. There's always the classic What's New in Microsoft Intune. That's our monthly blog that Scott Sawyer publishes. And a couple of highlights within these that I wanted to call out. Specifically, there are app protection policies that have been updated for these additional apps in your environment. I haven't heard of a lot of these apps, but this may be applicable to you all. But more importantly, it reminded me that we now have the ability in app protection policies to prevent screenshots from occurring. So if you are using app protection policies with mobile application management in the environment today, you know that we've got copy paste restrictions to be able to deploy out there so we can protect sensitive data or managed data, prevent that from going into third-party apps or other services. But one of the trickier pieces or components of that was being able to just do a screenshot on the device and sending that screenshot as a picture of that sensitive information. And now in partnership with Apple and Google on the Android side, we are able to put app protection policies in place for screen capture, which is a very welcome addition for most customers, especially if you're in the healthcare sector and working with PII information, PHI information. All of you are working with that to a degree, but specifically in our academic medical centers, that's been a hot topic that I've been asked over the years, is what do we do when a customer or a user takes a screenshot? How do we prevent that? And app protection policies now can prevent against that. So I wanted to call that one out for you guys as well. And then the other big one, if you're an Intune Suite customer, is the Enterprise App Management, which is our third-party patching solution. It's got a catalog of available apps that we kind of prepackage for you and now notify you in the console if there's an update for. Those now have support inside the ESP. So for your autopilot deployments, you can target those applications inside the ESP to ensure that your devices are up to date from an application perspective right off the bat. Will that keep recall from taking screen caps too? No, I don't think so, because that's kind of
No,
what recall is
like with
for.
with recall, it's I mean the whole point of recall is to take screenshots, right?
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
if we don't want screenshots taken from recall, then you just won't allow people to turn it on.
And MAM is really only supported for Edge right today. So
On Windows today, right now,
yep.
yeah, it's only there
Yep.
for Edge.
All right. Moving on, we also had some big updates in July around Mac OS, and I don't think this is the right blog for it. Yeah, it is. We now have some pretty big Mac updates. Number one, I already told you that Platform SSO is GA. But number two, we now have lapse support inside of Mac OS. However, there's a catch. And that catch is that it's only available during enrollment through the ADE. So you can only configure the lapse for Mac OS through the enrollment profile. I know what you're probably thinking. It's not ideal for sure. They are looking to get full support, for post deployment and being able to enable that, later down the line. But as of today, it is only available inside of the enrollment profile that you configure with ADE, which is still exciting to see that we do have lab support there. So that's a big one for you to start testing out. We also have some updated DDM policies around software updates and making sure that we are getting faster and more reliable updates around that. There was another big update to the Apple side, which I wrote down. MDM migration. Apple has made available in some of those DDM policies that we can help move iOS and iPadOS from one MDM to another. So in their latest iOS release upcoming, they will have the ability for you to migrate those devices from one MDM to another, and we will have 0-day support with Intune for that. So that was a separate blog that was highlighting that, but it was kind of wrote into my Apple updates in my brain, the way that my brain works sometimes. So I'll throw that link into the chat here. But that's great if you are looking to consolidate into one MDM, specifically with Intune, right? If you're using Jamf or Mosel or another MDM solution out there, you'll be able to migrate those devices pretty seamlessly over to Intune, which is really exciting. Let me get that blog for you, and then I will move on to some of these other updates, and then I'll turn it over to Richard. EPM policies now, if you're using endpoint privilege management, again, as part of the Intune suite, that's a separate cost. We now have the ability to, we've got deny rules now available, and we also support wildcards in those rules for elevation support. So I know a few of you have been testing this out and have actually asked me specifically, do we have the ability to do wildcard support so that if an updater lives in like a general folder, can we just put that wildcard there instead of having to update the rules every time there's an update to the application? And so we finally have wildcard support there. And we also have the ability to do deny rules. So if you want to force applications to be denied elevation rights when a user runs it, for whatever reason, then you've got capabilities for doing that. The last one that is on this blog that is good to know is that we now have some customizable device cleanup rules for different platforms. So it used to kind of be all or nothing in your environment. Now you can get more custom in saying, hey, we only want to retain those Windows devices for X amount of time or those iOS devices for X amount of time, which I think will actually be a huge benefit to most schools, especially if you have like shared carts with iPads as well as Windows devices. I see that a lot, and typically in that K-3 space, having those iPads. So being able to clean up those devices within your organization based on platform is pretty well. And then the last one that I actually had, and I must have clicked out of it, was that we have our back controls introduced inside of AutoPatch. Um, the When we had AutoPatch finally released for EDU, we were all really excited. But most of you from there it is, from a higher ed perspective, have brought up, that's great. We still need to be able to do our back controls across departments and ensure that we can patch these devices appropriately or not so where it's needed. And so we do have now supported our back controls within AutoPatch. We have two new roles altogether that we've introduced. So we have Windows AutoPatch Reader and Windows AutoPatch Administrator. So again, if you haven't heard the news, AutoPatch is available to EDU for free. I should say it's not for free. It's included in your A3, A5 licensing. So if you're paying for that today, you now have AutoPatch as a part of that. And I think these rules are very welcome to help you administer this appropriately within your environment. Okay, I think those were the biggest updates over the summer that I wanted to inform you all. Nope, there's one more surprise, surprise. This one's not really related to um, really Windows, but more so around the Windows 365 offering. We now have a limited public preview offering of something called Windows 365 Reserve. And I just wanted to make you all aware of this because I'm really excited about this offering. Essentially, it is a SKU that you can purchase that will allow you to have some reserve instances of Windows 365 Cloud PCs to be made available for your users. So what I mean by that is if you take a scenario where a user has a hardware failure and they need to be able to connect to their device to get some work done, but their actual hardware device is blown up for whatever reason, they can't access it, whether it's a hardware failure, software issue, what have you, you can spin up a Windows 365 Cloud PC and give them a fully managed device, right, enrolled into Intune, has access to their OneDrive data. It's a one-to-one dedicated relationship to this Cloud PC, but they have access for it for 10 days. There's kind of a time bomb on it, and after 10 days, they can't actually utilize it anymore. But this is great because you can have some reserved instances. It's much cheaper than your standard Windows 365 SKUs because they are only meant to be used at chunks of time, in the event of an emergency or helping those VIPs get back up and running really, really quickly. So this is pretty exciting, especially from some recent outages like the CrowdStrike event and other ones that we've seen in the past where if you just have a hardware issue or something happens in your environment, you can quickly spin up a Cloud PC through the Intune console and provide that end user experience to those users. It's their machine. They authenticate into it with their standard Entra ID login. It'll sync their OneDrive. They'll get their Outlook profile. They can sign into Teams, etc. So it's a great way to position that. So I wanted to call that out because I've already had some higher ed institutions kind of asking about this from a business continuity perspective, saying how can we achieve this? And this is a great offering now. So it is in limited public preview. You do have to sign up to get access to it. So, if y'all are interested in that and your account rep isn't fully, I guess, aware of this or knows about this or could help you get going, let Richard or Scott or I know, and we'll help you guys get going. Okay. I think that's it for me. Richard, did I miss anything that you're aware of?
Well, yeah, there's like 4 months worth of stuff
I
to
know. I'm
talk
trying to
about.
focus on the big stuff here. It's impossible to talk about it
Yeah,
all.
it's like a fire hose. It's tough to keep up with everything that's going on. No, I think you hit pretty much like there wasn't a ton this summer, I don't think, from an endpoint perspective. I think now that we're getting closer to Ignite, that's usually when a lot of the newness is going to come out. So summer, and given all the reorgs and everything else that's been going on within our business, things have been, I think, a little lighter than they have been in the past. So,
Yep.
but yeah, I think one thing you may
Oh,
have missed because Jonathan's talking about here in the chat
yeah.
is
I just
quality
read it.
updates. Yeah,
Yep.
quality updates during an enrollment status page.
Yeah.
So going through autopilot, now we've added the ability for quality updates to be deployed. There's actually been a couple of issues between that and you didn't mention the backup, Windows backup for organizations.
Oh yeah. You're right.
Those two things
Oh,
were recently announced, and the backup for organizations. Well, I guess we can probably talk about the updates during Ubi
yeah. Do that one
for.
first because I kind of held off on the backup stuff, but you can explain that story if you want.
Yeah. So, well, there's actually a couple of issues going on right now, I think, because the ESP um, challenges that we have right now, I think in some cases we've rolled it back.
Yep.
Jonathan's seeing that it is rolled back, but we also rolled back the backup as well because there was a 0-day patch. So when you go through autopilot with a device, you've probably noticed that screen that says, "Hey, we're checking for updates," and a lot of people mistook that for we're actually installing Windows updates, but in reality, we're actually installing auto patch related 0-day patches. So there's a number of things that we can install during Ubi that help get us through Ubi. So if we find that there's a bug in like Windows Media, for instance, or there's just some issue that's going to prevent autopilot from completing successfully, then we can issue a 0-day patch. And so when your device goes through autopilot, the first thing it's going to do is say, "Hey, are there any 0-day patches available for me to install to fix any known issues?" And if there are, then we'll download and install. So it might take a little longer than normal. But that's different than what we've announced last month around installing Windows quality updates during the enrollment status page. So with that, that's actually installing the latest cumulative update to the machine. And this is one of those things that's been kind of a weird like push-pull thing where some people really want this, but other people really don't. And if you've ever had to service Windows Media, you know that if your media is really old, so imagine buying a device today that's been in market for about a year, you might have Windows Media that was like the RTM version of Windows 11 24H2. If that's the case, that media came out actually in June. It went to RTM around June or July. And if you're trying to install one of those devices today and that media shipped or that device shipped with that media, you've got media that's about 10 to 11 months old. So to install that cumulative update during Ubi, it's going to take a while because you're about 10, 11 months behind. So when it comes to time to install, how long are you willing to wait for the enrollment status page to finish? And that's been one of the challenges that we've had for a long time in actually even getting this out, is that we haven't decided, like we just couldn't come to the terms to say, well, do we want someone to have to sit for 15, 20 minutes while you're waiting for a cumulative update to install? Um, Obviously, we've decided that yes, we're going to release this because it's out now. And this is a lot of the reason behind this is because people have been asking for it. Like from a security standpoint, do you want to wait for the end user to install the cumulative update after they got into the OS, or do you want them to actually have the latest cumulative update installed before they even get to the desktop? That's the decision you're making by selecting the option that Garrett has on the screen. But you have to know that if I want them to install that update, then their experience, they're going to be stuck behind ESP until that's done. And it could be 15, 20, 30 minutes, who knows, depending on how old the media is, how slow the device is, it can take a very long time. What we've also noticed, and I haven't dug too deep into this, but if you're using pre-provisioning, it actually doesn't work during pre-provisioning. which
Yeah.
you would think that, well, that's probably the number one use case that I would actually use this for is I'd want to do white glove or pre-provisioning. I'd get the cumulative update installed, and then when I give it to the user, they don't have to sit through that. I think it's a bug. I don't think that the intent was for pre-provision, not for that to work. So we'll need to take a look to see why that is. Again, I haven't spent a lot of time investigating why that is the case, but I'm pretty sure that that's not the intention. So TBD on that one. But yeah, so I don't know, Gary,
Similarly,
if there's anything else in there that I
yeah.
missed, but
No, I think that's it, right? So you
okay.
can toggle the switch. This is available. However, it was rolled back in the media, so it's actually not going to do anything for you right now. But with that rollback, we also rolled back the capability of this, which is the Windows backup for organizations. And we actually announced this, was it Ignite last year that we announced this?
Yeah, this was announced quite a while ago, yeah.
Yeah. Which is essentially being able to perform. You've all probably seen the consumer version of the Windows Backup app itself. This is just the organization version of that, right? And we can actually manage this through Intune. So if you actually go look inside the Intune console, in the enrollment section, you can actually see the UI to be able to turn this on or off. But similarly, with that rollback, that kind of removes the ability to update Windows through the ESP. We also rolled back support for this. So until that gets re-released, we won't be able to take advantage of this. But this essentially allows us to back up your org data, right, on a computer for an org user, and it's going to um, take all of their settings, and that's things like the store apps themselves, the start menu, right, all of the goodness that they personalize within their device itself, and allow you to be able to restore that back onto a new device. So if you back it up, we're going to store all that information, apps, settings, right, shortcuts, that kind of stuff, all within the Entra ID itself. And then you can restore it upon their new device that's being issued. So you can kind of see what the UI looks like upon doing this. And again, this is all managed within the Intune console, very similar to how you would enable Windows Hello for Business. So if you allow the user to be able to restore this from their backup, then they can walk through this wizard. They can choose what they want to restore from, and allows them to get back to a functional state on their new device much, much faster. And we've all dealt with this, right? We all have to go rebuild our profiles. I had to do it over the summer. Richard convinced me to go rebuild my machine, so I had to go do it. Then I had to go reconfigure everything. And I think this is going to be a huge enabler, right? As we call out, the Windows 10 end of support to get over to Windows 11, this can be used to help you get over to the Windows 11 much faster for those users and create a better experience for them. So we are excited about this. Again, I haven't tested this at all either. That backup policy is enabled via Intune. You can control this through the Intune UI. But until we get that latest, and I think we call it out right here, that hotfix still needs to come out, or they need to re-release that cumulative update for those devices to be able to actually leverage this and use it.
Yeah, and just to answer some of the questions in the chat. So Todd brings up a good point that this doesn't actually back up in the traditional sense, though, and that's true. So we're not backing up user data. User data still should be in OneDrive. However, we are backing up your settings. So as Todd mentions, it's kind of like enterprise state roaming, although that is still around. But this is really settings only, like settings in the settings app in Windows. This is not settings of your applications. This is settings when you go to the actual settings app for Windows. That's what we're talking about.
And you can see that inside the Intune console here under the enrollment section. This is the new UI that you can go in and configure. And right now, it's pretty. I have a slow internet connection, I think. And sorry to interrupt you, Richard.
Oh, you're fine. But yeah, so that's there. It's still early. Again, we've kind of rolled this back because of some issues that we had with the 0-day patch that came out during Ubi that actually caused some issues with BitLocker. And I think there was one other issue that it caused too. So that's being fixed right now. So this should get fully taken care of. But it's really designed more so for the Windows 10 to Windows 11 migration for users to migrate their settings from their Windows 10 device to the Windows 11 machine. But yeah, Garrett's got the link. He'll put the link in the chat.
I just threw the docs in the chat.
Have access to how to use it. I'm not sure what the total use case is going to be, like how many people are going to really take advantage of it. It's there if folks need it, but if most of you are already on Windows 11 and you're not doing a lot of device swaps or anything like that, then you may not necessarily care so much about the actual settings themselves within Windows. You just tell the user to reset them up if they need to. But I think the most important thing is the data.
Right, and it only works for Windows, right? It's not going to back up your settings and port those over to macOS. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So let me share my desktop.
Yeah. So Richard's got some really exciting stuff to show you now.
Hope it's exciting. Okay. So some of you guys have already seen this, but if you haven't seen it, because we've been playing with this now for a couple months now, so it's been out, but we've got a new UI, and I've showed this on prior office hours for FFU. So we now have a new user interface that we can play with. So the intent of this user interface, and I've only got 15 minutes. I'm not going to go over everything in 15 minutes. There's a very, very long YouTube video, which I tend to record very long videos. Watch that at 1.5 speed if you want, or 2x if you can. But that'll go over everything in a deeper way. I still have to get docs out. I'm still working on some code stuff, so docs haven't really been written yet. But the intent of the UI was really to actually create configuration files for FFU. So a while back, we had added the support for adding config files because the command lines were getting so long. And Garrett's like, this is too complicated, man. Like, these command lines are way long and I don't understand all the different parameters and everything. So I just need like a user interface that can do all this. So we made config files to handle that. But then we needed a way to actually make the config file. And so you could make it on your own through the command line, but it was kind of complicated to do that. So the next best thing is make a UI that just generates the config file for you. And so we started working through that. But then it's like, well, we can actually just make a UI that just kind of does everything. And behind the scenes, it uses the old PowerShell script and it uses the old config file setup. But now you don't necessarily need to do that. So when we use FFU Builder, which is just the name I just gave the tool now, we're just calling it FFU Builder. That's the official name. In here, we can go and configure the Hyper-V settings, the Windows settings, the various updates, applications, Office apps, drivers, some build settings, and then there's a monitor where you can watch. Basically, it's looking at the log file that we've had to open up with like CM Trace or just Notepad. Now we've got an actual monitor that just reads the log file for you, all directly within the user interface. So by default, you really shouldn't have to modify anything really in the Hyper-V settings. By default, I pull the VM switch information. So if you've been using the old PowerShell script and having to figure out the VM switch information on your own, now I pull all the different switches that you might have on your device. And if it defaults to one that you don't necessarily use all the time or whatever, you can just go ahead and select the one you do use or you want to use, or you can just put in other and type in the name of the switch and then the name of the IP address for that switch. We've got the disk size, memory, processors, all that stuff. You shouldn't really have to modify too much here. Some of you in the K-12 space, or maybe in higher ed, but primarily in the K-12 space, if you're using any newer devices that have UFS hard disks, eMMC is being phased out for UFS. So the lower end space for Windows laptops will be using those UFS drives. And those drives actually have a 4096 or a 4K logical sector size. And so that sector size needs to be set to 4K. If it's not, then you're going to have issues. So if you make a FFU with 512, and that's been working on a bunch of other devices just fine, but then all of a sudden you get to a device where the FFU doesn't apply. There is some logic in there that if it fails, we do look at the error codes, and the error codes that come back, I can be fairly confident that the error code that's coming back is most likely related to an incorrect logical sector size. So what that basically means is if it doesn't work, build a new FFU, make sure it's set to 4096.
And you're not expected to remember that? That is all documented.
It is documented, but it isn't documented, but it's going to be documented because I have to write all new docs for the whole UI. So that's going to take like months to do. But moving on to Windows settings. So with Windows settings, you just pass your ISO file. If you don't pass an ISO, then we'll just download the latest release of Windows from the media creation tool. I strongly suggest you bring in your own ISO. Now, what is documented is the media types, all that kind of stuff that is in the Word doc. So we do document all of that. One thing to note here is that as you go through this, by default, you're going to see that we don't have a lot of Windows releases listed, and this is on purpose. It's on purpose because if you don't pass an ISO, the media creation tool doesn't allow you to download anything other than Windows 10 or Windows 11. But if you do pass an ISO, then that ISO will unlock all the different Windows releases. So if you're doing LTSC or LTSB, hopefully no one is doing LTSB 2016. It's a pain in the you-know-what to update. It takes like hours to install QNAP updates. So I hope no one's using that. Same with Server 2016. Both of those take a while. But we now unlock all the different Windows releases when you pass an ISO. We also unlock the various Windows versions too. So I can install 22H2 all the way to 24H2. If I'm using Windows 10, then I'm pretty much I'm locked to 22H2 on Windows 10 because that's the latest supported version. What I tried to do in this list, if you see something that's missing, it's most likely because it's not a supported release of Windows anymore. So I'm trying to keep up with what's supported and what's not. Although, because you have to kind of hard code this stuff, sometimes I'm just going to miss things. But for the most part, all of the supported releases of Windows, at least right now, should be listed in either the Windows versions or the Windows releases. We've got our architecture as well, and then the various Windows SKUs. If you do pick a Windows server, you'll notice that the SKUs change. And it's the same thing with LTSC. If you pick an LTSC build, then LTSC SKU changes as well. Try to do this just to make it simple, so you didn't have to wade through a bunch of SKUs that didn't matter to you. So anything that's listed for Windows 11, the SKUs should all match for what's supported for the stuff that you've already selected. Product key, if you're using business media and you want to, or if you have like a Windows Home device, I know a lot of us in K-12 have Windows Home, even higher ed actually purchases Windows Home. If that's the case and you want to install Windows Enterprise or Education, you will need to specify that you're installing Education and then put your product key in. That's because subscription activation won't work. I talk about this ad nauseum in some of the videos, but also in the doc. I think in the doc as well, I talk about that. So you want to make sure that if you are using Home, and you probably are going to likely want to reimage that, and if you are, select the right SKU and the product key. We also support optional features. So if you want to install like .NET 3.5, you can do that through a Windows optional feature, but there's a litany of optional features you can pick from. Updates, all the updates that we can install for Windows Update. So the latest QNAP update, latest .NET, as well as Defender, Edge, OneDrive, the latest malicious software removal tool. And I also added microcode. This is like really old for LTSC and Server 2016, 2019. Most people won't really have to deal with that, but all those options are there. But what's really new and really, I think it's really cool. You guys might not, but it took a heck of a lot of work to get it to work. So I'm going to say it's really cool. Downloading your WinGet apps. So we've built a full UI now that interacts with WinGet, and it's powered primarily by the PowerShell module for WinGet. And so in here, I can come and I can search for any any app that's available in the winget repo. So I know everyone pretty much deploys Chrome. As I search for this, it's going to come up with all the different Chrome related applications, even though like we see Electron here. This is all, a lot of the stuff that you'll probably see that that doesn't necessarily say Chrome is most likely due to the application itself being Electron, which runs on Chromium. And so there's probably like a tag or something within winget that has the word Chrome in it somewhere. So if you do a search, it's like, hey, I've got to see a bunch of stuff in here that doesn't actually have Chrome in the name. It's most likely because it's like an Electron app or it has something to do with Chromium. But in this case, we can see that I've got Google Chrome here. So I can select that, do the installation. But I also have the other Chrome versions as well, like Chrome Canary, Dev, and all the other items there. We can also import JSON files that have other applications that you have deployed. So I always include like an inbox sample app list for whatever the latest release of Windows is. I do this primarily because the store apps are always out of date, and I try to keep this up to date that has the latest store apps that you can download from winget. So when we do this, you'll see these are all the winget apps that, or I'm sorry, all the store apps that you can download from winget and apply them to your machine. Now, I know some of you guys are probably removing a lot of these apps to begin with. Totally fine. But there's a lot of people out there that don't remove the apps, and they want the applications to be completely up to date before they give the devices out to an end user, or just from a security standpoint, we want to keep those things up to date. So in this case, we can import all of those and then just do the download. I'm not going to download these because the machine that I'm on right now isn't joined to my Entra tenant. And so when it's not joined to the Entra tenant, you will get prompted to sign in for every single app. And that's a limitation with how the winget PowerShell module allows you to download apps, is that we need, in order to download the license file, you need to be signed in. So what I suggest is if you need to really download like a lot of store apps, do it from a machine that's joined to a tenant. It doesn't have to be your work tenant. It could be like if you have a dev tenant or a test tenant, you can join to that as well. We just need it to be joined to an Entra, like an Entra ID needs to be signed in. That way we can use SSO to provide the credentials so that we can get the license files for the apps. So, so you will run into that if you're doing this from an unmanaged machine. But we can download all sorts of apps through winget. You can bring your own applications. In the video that I'll link, we talk about this ad nauseum with all the different things. I've added some things since the video's been released. So you might find that back in July when the video came out, some of these items don't exist in the video, like the additional exit codes. I added that last month sometime. I also added the ability to ignore non-zero exit codes. So if you have something that for whatever reason kicks out like a 1 or a 2 or some random exit code, but it still installs successfully, then you won't get stuck. It'll just bypass and just continue on like normal. And then we have just all the different applications will show up in the list here, and you can do prioritization. So if I import, let me see here.
You're getting like a behind the scenes.
Yeah, so if I import a JSON file, I've got a Chrome and a Firefox one here. In the video, again, you'll want to watch the whole video before you start doing this. But in the video, I do mention for like your command line and your arguments. For MSI files, you need to put MSI for the command line, and that's it, just MSI exec. And then for your arguments, you would put in /i and then whatever the installation is that you're installing. So in this case, Chrome, and that's the D132 path, because on the D drive, that's where the app's ISO resides, and that has all of the content in it. So D is pretty much going to be kind of like the hard-coded drive letter that all of your content's going to reside on. And so this is the path to where that file exists. And then quiet and no restart. And so when we do this and we have this all set up, we've also added the ability to copy the apps. So if your apps exist like on file shares or some other location, like I've tested with file shares on servers, You'll put your source path in. For me, it's just my local C temp folder, but you might have it like on whack whack, some server name / share and then some path. And if that's the case, then we can copy the content from there directly to your FFU development folder. So if I click copy apps, this will do the copy and tells you over here that the copy was successful. And then when you look into your apps folder, you should see under Win32 that Chrome and Firefox are here. And so we see Chrome's there, Firefox is there. So we can pull in all of your local apps that you have internally on your environment, and you can get those apps pulled in directly to the FFU process and add those to the FFU. We've got Office. This really hasn't changed all that much. Drivers has changed. Well, it hasn't really changed. It's the same process, but what we do now is we've set it up so we can download multiple drivers at the same time. So we use parallelization to download all this stuff in parallel. And so if I wanted to download like a bunch of Surface Book drivers, actually I'm not going to do that. It's too big. We'll do Surface 3 because it's very small. So I want to download these 3. It's going to download all 3 of these at the same time. It'll download and extract the drivers. And then there's a checkbox down here now that we've also added to compress drivers to WIM files. So if you have a USB drive that you've downloaded all of your drivers to, and it's pretty heavy, like it's pretty big, we now can actually compress those. So I've downloaded these 3, just going to wait for this one to finish. Once this is done extracting, in the drivers folder, we'll see that we've got the 3 Surface models there. I get my confirmation that the download has finished. And then from here, if I wanted to compress these, like, oh shoot, I forgot to click the compress button, I can hit the checkbox for compress driver model to WIM, and I can re-download. And what it'll do is it'll compress the existing drivers. It knows that it's already downloaded those. So instead of re-downloading them, let's just go and compress. So this will then compress the drivers out to a WIM, and it'll should remove these 3 folders here, and we'll have 3 WIM files. And so these WIM files now will be much smaller than the extracted folder that has all the drivers in it. And so by doing that, you can have a lot more driver packages on your USB drive, and we'll then use the WIM file to apply those to the device. We'll then, once you have all your drivers figured out, then we go into build, and I'll just do a real quick build. We won't sit through it. We're already at 2, so but I want to get this build kicked off just so you guys can see what the monitor looks like. So we've got all of our options here. We've got the build USB drive. There's some settings here. Again, watch the video. I go over a lot of this stuff in there. But what I'll do right now is just kick off the build. And then with the build, it's going to start going. And we'll see here it's going to start installing Office. But what you'll notice, though, is that now we don't have to use verbose logging and watch it through the command prompt or the PowerShell window. We now actually keep track of all the monitoring and all the logging directly in the monitor tab. And so what you can also do in this is you can copy and paste directly out of it. So if you select a line and you do Control-C, you can copy and paste that into like a notepad file. Which, let's see what I got for notepad here. So that one line, just copy and pastes. And then just like CM Trace, if you're used to CM Trace, if you click on a line that's not the last line, then the window will stay there. So if I keep it on this line right here, as soon as this is done downloading Office, it'll move on, but I'll stay right at this location. With that, I'll post a link to the video unless Garrett's already done it. That way you guys can take a look there. And also post a link to the repository so you guys can go download and play around with it. I know some of you have already done it, but if you haven't, I'd suggest check out the UI. That's where I'm spending most of my time on the code. I'm really not spending a lot of time on the 2505 builds, only if there's a bug that I've got to fix. So with that, I'm done.
Huge amount of applause. I mean, this has been a long time coming, and I've gotten to witness all of this development, from you on the back end. And it's been quite amazing. I think you're all really going to enjoy the UI. I've tested it. It's great. it really simplifies that. I think that's when I was getting into it. Was like, there's so many options now. We've got driver support, we've got app support. Like, I'm not going to remember all these commands. We need a UI. And Richard said, hold my water. And went to town over the summer. So I think for the new school year, y'all will really enjoy it. So yeah, I did post the link in the GitHub repo. So I got the video in there. So definitely check that out. And Richard, just a huge amount of kudos and thank you for contributing to the community like this, really giving back and optimizing these processes for most of our customers. I think everyone's going to really enjoy it. So if you are in GitHub, go hit that star button in there, rate that sucker up, and show them some love that way. Share with your friends, your colleagues, let them know.
Yeah, Jonathan, that's actually that's interesting to know that your lab image for Autodesk takes 7 minutes, because a lot of people that I've talked to that have been using like Config Manager or MDT have told me like, oh yeah, it takes like 90 minutes for us to do like our labs that have Autodesk or Adobe Premiere or Creative Cloud. So to see it happen in 7 minutes, that's like unheard of for most people.
Awesome.
So very cool.
Very,
all right, guys. Well, thanks
cool.
for sticking around. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us. We will be back in 2 weeks. So that is Tuesday, September 23rd. Same time, same place, same back channel. Again, this link should work, and hopefully we'll get that lobby changed. I'll be curious to see if we have persistent chat after we end this meeting. And we will see you in a couple of weeks.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Take care.
See you guys. Bye.